Welcome back to Collective Histories. It's been a while since we made an actual history video that's not a tier list. Anyway, let's dive right in. So, have you ever lost something that you really didn't want to lose? Now imagine if you lost that thing, whether it be a TV remote, your car keys, or your mind. Imagine if this thing was lost for thousands of years, at least hundreds to thousands of years, and then it gets rediscovered and we know nothing about it because it's been lost to time. Well, there are a bunch of civilizations out there which have also been lost to time, and only now are we discovering more about these civilizations, what they did, what they ate, what religion they followed, who they went to war with, and ultimately what led to their extinction. So in this video we're going to cover some of these lost civilizations that have been lost to time. We're going to uncover a little bit about them, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll have more of an understanding of what they were and what they did and what happened to them. So before we begin, please hit the subscribe button. Every time you subscribe, it supports us in ways you can't possibly begin to imagine, and it makes a big difference, so please keep subscribing. Thank you very much. Okay, let's begin. You know that big, nasty, half-man, half-bull thing called the Minotaur that appears regularly throughout much of Greek mythology? Well, in fact, he doesn't technically belong to Greek mythology because he belongs to Minoan mythology, and the Minoan mythology belongs to the ancient, long-gone civilization of Minoa. And the Minoan civilization was an ancient Aegean Bronze Age culture that thrived on the island of Crete and other nearby islands from approximately 2600 to 1100 BC. It was named after the legendary king Minos of Greek mythology, and the Minoans are known for their advanced and sophisticated culture marked by unique art, architecture, and a complex socio-economic structure. If you visit Crete today, you will probably find many old, ancient, lost buildings and areas which were made by the Minoans. So here's a little bit about them. So the Minoan chronology can be split into three parts. There's the early Minoan period, 2600 to 2000 BC, and this was characterized by the development of early settlements and the emergence of the basic social structures which would be used throughout their history. Then there's the middle Minoan period, from about 2000 to 1600 BC, and this witnessed the rise of palaces, increased trade, and the flourishing of art and culture. Much of it is still visible in Crete today, of course. And then lastly, you have the late Minoan period, which was marked by the peak of Minoan influence, extensive trade networks, and the construction of grand palaces. Speaking of palaces, Minoan society was centered around grand palaces, such as the Palace of Knossos, Phaistos, and Malia. These palaces served as administrative, economic, and possibly religious centers, and the remains of some of these are still there today. Then you have art and frescoes. So Minoan art is characterized by its vibrancy, fluidity, and depictions of nature and everyday life. Frescoes adorned the walls of palaces and homes, showcasing scenes of rituals, sports, and nature. The Prince of the Lilies and the Dolphin fresco are famous examples of this, and you can see these either online or in person if you so wish. Then there's the script. Minoans developed a script known as Linear A, but it remains undeciphered, limiting our understanding of their written records and language. Whereas with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, for example, we have the Rosetta Stone, which has helped us to translate much, if not all, of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Well, sadly, we don't have this for Minoa, so things are still left untranslated. Then we have religion. Minoans are believed to have worshipped a pantheon of deities with a particular emphasis on a mother goddess. Rituals and ceremonies likely took place in sacred caves and on mountaintops, and if you've been to Crete, you'll know there are many mountaintops. The Minoans were skilled seafarers and traders, as many island nations were at this time, and they established maritime connections with Egypt, Anatolia, the Cyclades, and the Levant. Their economic prosperity was largely based on trade. And then there was the decline. The exact reasons for the decline of the Minoan civilization are still debated, and they were debated at the time too by the likes of Herodotus, for example. And the late Minoan period saw the destruction of some palaces, possibly due to natural disasters, particularly earthquakes or volcanic eruptions or invasions. Much of the ancient world was troubled by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, so it's probably safe to assume it was one of those two things, and given the nearby proximity of many volcanoes within the Aegean Sea, it's almost a certainty that natural disaster occurred and wiped this civilization out. And then lastly, there's the influence of the Mycenaean civilization, which succeeded the Minoans, was influenced by Minoan culture. This is evident in the adoption of Minoan artistic motifs, architectural features, and written scripts. Sir Arthur Evans, a British archaeologist, conducted extensive excavations at Knossos from 1900 to 1931, and his work brought the Minoan civilization to the forefront of archaeological studies. And the Minoan civilization Civilization is still a subject of ongoing archaeological research, and new discoveries continue to shed light on this fascinating culture. They left behind an enduring legacy, and though it's often today mixed in with much of the ancient Greek history and mythology due to the geographical location of Crete, it's still enduring as its own distinct mythology, history, and culture. If we go even further back in time and move even further east, we will end up in what is modern-day Iraq, and this was the home of the ancient civilization of the Sumer. Sumer was one of the earliest known civilizations in the world and is often referred to as the cradle of civilization. It emerged in the southern part of Mesopotamia, which is roughly equivalent to present-day Iraq, around 4500 BC. The Sumerians were a non-Semitic people who established a highly advanced and influential society, and here are some key aspects of the Sumerian civilization. So, firstly, it's important to remember that most civilizations back then acted as city-states. The Sumerian civilization was characterized by the development of city-states, including Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur. Each city-state had its own government, typically ruled by a king, and they often engaged in conflicts for resources and dominance. The Sumerians are also credited with the invention of one of the earliest writing systems known as cuneiform. Initially, it was pictographic, but later evolved into a more abstract system of wedge-shaped marks on a clay tablet. Cuneiform was used for record-keeping, administrative purposes, literature, and communication. Sumerians also built monumental structures known as ziggurats, which were stepped pyramids with a temple or shrine at the top. By the way, if you are one of these conspiracy theorists who thinks that pyramids were all built by aliens and that's why there are so many pyramids around the world, just remember the shape of the pyramid was the best shape you could possibly build a building from, and the most reliable. This is why ancient civilizations did this. Anyway, I digress. The best known example is the ziggurats of These structures had religious and administrative functions. Sumerians also had a polytheistic religion, as many civilizations did at the time, with a pantheon of gods and goddesses. Important deities included Anu, the sky god, Enlil, the god of air and storms, Enki, the god of water and wisdom, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Much of the ancient Sumerian religion actually influenced the others which would come. It even has some influence over the Abrahamic faiths of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, mostly because the Sumerian religion also had a big flood story, very similar to the one of Noah's Ark, so read into that, I dare you. Sumerians were among the first to practice intensive agriculture, relying on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers for irrigation. They cultivated crops like barley and wheat and raised livestock. The surplus of agricultural production allowed for the growth of urban centers. Society was structured hierarchically, as again many were and still are, with a ruling class that included kings, priests, and government officials. The majority of the population consisted of farmers, laborers, and craftsmen. Sumerians made significant contributions to many various fields, especially mathematics, where they developed a sexagesimal system, astronomy, and architecture. They created the wheel, which had a profound impact on transportation, and the sundial, which is probably the invention they're most known for timekeeping. The Epic of Gilgamesh. How can we talk about Sumer without the Epic of Gilgamesh? The Epic of Gilgamesh, an ancient literary work from Sumer, is one of the earliest known pieces of literature. It tells the story of the legendary king Gilgamesh and addresses themes of mortality, friendship, and the quest for knowledge. It's also within this story that you will find the flood story. And it's also in this story where you'll find Gilgamesh, who is still waging war on me in the game Civilization 6. Very annoying. And then lastly, there's the fall of Sumer. So Sumer faced invasions and conflicts from neighboring peoples, such as the Akkadians and the Elamites. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon the Great, eventually conquered Sumer around 2334 BC, and they never recovered from this. The legacy of Sumer extended beyond its decline, influencing subsequent cultures in the region and contributing to the broader development of civilization in the ancient Near East. The achievements of the Sumerians laid the foundations for future advancements in science, literature, and governance, and whereas ancient Egypt rightfully gets its deserved acclaim for its contributions to the world we currently live in, I think the Sumer deserve a little bit more of that same love. This concludes part 1 of this series. We're going to be doing about 2 civilizations per episode, and they will just be posted every so often. It's not one we're going to do quick succession. We're just going to drag this out. We're going to cover as many as we can, and yeah, it's fun. I enjoy doing them, and hopefully you enjoyed listening and watching it. If you want more more from Collective Histories, please hit the subscribe button. I'm not going to go over it again. We went through it at the start, but please, I beg, hit the subscribe button. And then if you want to go the extra mile, you can follow us at facebook.com/Collective Histories page, and on Instagram at instagram.com/The Collective Histories, and on X/Twitter at twitter.com/Collective Histo. And then you can really go the extra mile.
Quench my thirst at
buymeacoffee.com/Collective Histories. And if you do that, we're best friends for life. So have a lovely day, have a lovely weekend. We'll be back on Monday for the next video. Who knows what it will be? I keep saying we're going to do part 3 of this UK political parties video. It's going to happen at some point, I promise, and I just don't know when. Have a lovely day. We'll see you soon. Okay, goodbye.